Right. Welcome, Scituate Board of Health meeting, Scituate Town Hall, Selectmen's Hearing Room, Monday, December 22nd, 2014, 7 p.m. I'll take a motion to accept the agenda.
Make a motion to accept the agenda for Monday, December 22nd.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Accept an agenda, open meeting. All right, we'll get right into it. 5 Williamsburg Lane, Title V Septic System Hearing regarding variance request. Greg Morse, representing homeowner.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Adam Brodsky. I'm an attorney who lives in Scituate. My office is in Hingham, Trowan, Tacho, and Morgan. But Greg is going to take the lead on the presentation.
Great. With us as well is the property owner, Ken, and his wife, Elaine. We're here before you seeking a variance from Title V to allow the construction of a new single-family home and septic system at this property. The property has a little bit of history. I want to start from the beginning. It might take a few minutes, but I want to walk you through the whole thing. I was originally hired on this property in 2012 by the bonders owners to go out and permit a single-family house lot. When we did our preliminary research, the online GIS maps that the town has show that the majority of the site was a wetland resource area. We hired a wetlands botanist to go out to the site. Brad Holmes was a professional wetland scientist. Brad Holmes flagged a wetland at the back rear corner of the site. And to familiarize you with the plan, the site's right here. The property line is in bold. Country Way is on the left side of the plan. Williamsburg Lane is at the bottom. The wetland that was flagged is right here. I kind of highlighted it in blue on the plan. We found that the rest of the lot was upland area. It was not wetland as the town thought and as the state thought. And so as such, we looked at the town's 50-foot buffer zone and 100-foot buffer zone to that wetland. We went out, we performed percolation tests. We got favorable results witnessed by the Board of Health agent. We filed a septic system design plan with the Board of Health. The septic system design plan was approved. We filed with the Conservation Commission a notice of intent to allow work within the 100-foot buffer zone. We also filed with the Conservation Commission a stormwater permit showing the mitigation that we proposed for the stormwater associated with the site. The Conservation Commission held a public hearing. Abutters to the project within 100 feet were notified, and the project was approved. An order of conditions was issued. That order of conditions is still valid today. After that approval, I was hired on a separate property, a property to the south of this, number 305 Country Way, property owned by Doug Sheeran, who's permitted 3 single-family houses there. As part of that subdivision project, we did a wetlands filing called an ANRAD. It stands for Abbreviated Notice of Resource Area Delineation, to review the wetland areas on that site. The Conservation Commission approved the wetland areas on that site, and the project was then appealed by an abutter to the DEP. The DEP came out. We walked the site with a hydrogeologist, Bruce Bout from the DEP. We've walked it with the town planner, Laura Harbottle. We've walked it with the conservation agent, Patrick Gallivan. We've walked it with the chairman of the Conservation Commission, Frank Snow. And at the end of the day, what we found over at 305 Country Way was we found that at the rear of 305 Country Way, there is a wetland area. And we walked up that wetland area, and we walked all the way up that tributary area to this lot. And the conclusion of it was that the wetland actually ends at the 305 Country Way property. There is no wetland here. Even the wetland that was flagged was incorrectly flagged. What this is called a tributary. It is not a stream. It is not a wetland. It is a tributary to a public water supply. Tributaries have no setbacks per the wetlands protection regulations. Tributaries are important because 310 CMR 15-11, the Title V regulations, have a setback of 200 feet. It's called a Zone A, associated with a tributary. Now that I personally knew of the tributary at this site, the septic system here does not comply with that 200-foot setback. And so I submitted a letter to the Board of Health asking you to void the permit that was previously issued at this site due to the change in the delineation from a wetland to being classified as a tributary area. That was 2013.
Almost 2 years ago.
So we asked that that original approval become void because we didn't comply with the setback. And I advised the bonder zones that after the 305 Country Way project went through its subdivision process, appeal process, DEP appeal process, we would revisit this issue. And that's what we're here for today, to revisit this issue. Specifically, as I just mentioned, this section that I referenced, 310 CMR 15.211, has to do with setbacks from a tributary to a septic system. The requirement is that a septic tank in the leaching facility be outside the 200-foot setback from that tributary. Fortunately, Title V in its sections 15.410 and sections 15.411 outline the standard of review in the process for seeking a variance associated with such a request. Walking through, starting at 15.410, it says that the local approving authority and the department may vary the application provisions with respect to any particular case, except those listed in 310, 15.415. Section 15.415 are the provisions from which no variance may be granted. This is not listed as one of those variances. You have the authority and the ability to issue the variance from 15 to 11. And specifically, it requires A, that the person requesting the variance has established that enforcement of the provisions from which a variance is sought would be manifestly unjust, considering all the relevant facts and circumstances of the individual case. It requires B, that the person requesting a variance has established that a level of environmental protection that is at least equivalent to that provided under 310 CMR 15 conventional Title V be achieved without strict application of the provisions. In 3, it requires that in regards to new construction, that enforcement of the provision from which a variance is sought must be shown to deprive the applicant of substantially all beneficial use of the subject property in order to be manifestly unjust. So
So it's similar to the first one.
Yeah, exactly, it's similar to the first one. So, Title V outlines the procedure that the board has to follow when making these determinations. That procedure is highlighted in section 1411. It requires the board, in reviewing a variance A, that every request for a variance shall be in writing and make reference to the specific provisions of Title V for a variance. On December 5th, I submitted a letter, I believe you have a copy of it, that outlines our variance request. I submitted it with our plan application. B, it requires that no application for a variance should be complete until the applicant has notified all abutters. I have done that by certified mail. I did that on February 12th, provided the requisite 10-day, turn that in for the record.
December 12th?
Yep, December 12th. It has a requirement that any variance allowed by the local approving authority must be in writing. Any denial of an application should also be in writing. It must contain a brief statement for the reasons of the denial. And it requires that a copy of the variance be posted in town halls for 30 days after the issuance of the variance. And it finally finds that a request for a variance for a residential facility with 4 units or less shall be deemed constructively approved if the local approving authority does not act on the variance within 45 days. So we're within that 45-day timeline at this point.
What was this day one?
Day 1's December 5th from the date of application.
Oh, okay.
So this board here, going back to section 15.410, the reasons that we submitted in the letter here, in looking at the requirements for the variance, 15.410, first, what we found is that it's my professional opinion that we would meet the burden of proof because there was no location on the subject property that could comply with the 200-foot requirement. Therefore, variance is needed and necessary in order to site a septic system on this property. Secondly, we wrote that it would be manifestly unjust to apply the 200-foot setback considering all of the relevant facts. The Bongers owns, their family has owned this lot since mid-1950s. 1955, this lot was created. In 1970, there was a drainage easement, which the drainage easement is what causes the tributary to exist at this location. That was granted for $1 to the town. Copies of the deed.
I just handed out copies of the deed, copies of the easement.
When was the easement given?
1970. So then, in 1987, the town adopted a water resource protection district. At that time, the channel associated with that drainage ditch became tributary to the town's surface water supply. However, the lot existed prior to the adoption of that water resource protection district, and there was no tributary on the property until Mr. Bongazone's father granted the town the drainage easement.
Can I just interrupt one second? Is the easement in here?
It is,
Okay.
as well as an easement plan.
Okay.
Most importantly, we feel that the proposed plan establishes an equal environmental equivalent. We had substantial perk testing completed on the lot. We had adequate soils at 12 minutes an inch, 4 minutes an inch for percolation rates. And what we've done here is we've provided a biomicrobics microfast 0.5 denitrification septic system in lieu of a conventional septic tank. This is important because the Mass DEP has approved the FAST system, as it's called, as a nitrogen-reducing innovative alternative technology, and they've approved it with a general use approval. So it's allowed for new construction projects, not just remedial use. We've run nitrogen loading calculations on the lot with a conventional septic system. Conventional septic concentration is typically 35 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. With the microfast, and we've attached, with that December 5th letter, we've attached the testing standards from the State Septic System Test Center down the Cape. They're achieving 13.6 milligrams per liter out of the denitrification fast system. So it's treating the septic effluent to a much higher standard than we typically would see out of a septic tank. The US EPA water protection standards have a 10 parts per million designation for nitrogen at the surface water supply. We've performed calculations showing that this site in a net, because you have nitrogen not only coming out of the septic system, but you also have it over the land, would result in less than 10 parts per million nitrogen loading off of this site if the FAST system is employed. Lastly, the Bonger zones would be denied of any substantial beneficial use of the land if the variance were not granted in this case. This is an allowed use, a single-family home in the R2 zoning district. We feel that we've provided the enhanced protection required by Title V, and without the variance, they would be deprived of any use of this land. I would add that in permitting a house on this lot, there were really 2 permits that are necessary at this point to move forward. We understand we will need a septic permit for the septic system. Secondly, the Water Resource Protection District, established in 1987, established a 150-foot no-disturb buffer zone to that tributary area. This lot could not be developed and comply with that 150-foot no-disturb buffer zone. So that will require a variance, and we will be filing for the variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We expect to be on their January meeting. So we're here looking for the septic approval. We realize we have to go to the zoning board as well for that approval. I turn it over for any questions.
I might add just one point. I mean, the only reason we have a tributary on our property is because Mr. Bongerzone's father granted a drainage easement to the town of Scituate for $1. And subsequently, years later, then the town adopted the Water Resource Protection District. So obviously, had they known at the time, they likely would not have granted the drainage easement and created the tributary. I suspect there's a goodwill gesture to the town, because there's certainly no obligation on a party to grant an easement to the town for a drainage easement.
Is there anything from this property to the other property that I'll call it the Sharon property?
Yeah. So this drainage easement, it collects all of the catch basins in this general area of Countryway. It discharges at this head wall at the back of the property. And from here, it runs over land through a drainage ditch, through a wetland area, across a neighboring property on Williamsburg, onto 305 Countryway, ultimately to the water reservoir. It's about 1,300 feet away, the reservoir.
The only other point I would make is Greg did his nitrogen loading calculations as if the water supply was right next to our property. So in fact, it's 1,300 feet away. So before the water leaves the lot, it already meets the drinking water standards, and then it's going to be diluted even further as it travels, if it ultimately gets to the surface water supply. So we're very confident that we're providing more than the equivalent environmental protection. We anticipate meeting drinking water standards at the lot with the additional treatment, which is why we're coming in with an alternative technology system and not a conventional system with some enhancement.
Yeah, no, the system looks more than adequate. It's a pretty impressive system.
Do you have any comment?
I think the only person that we haven't received input from is the water superintendent, who I was not able to reach prior to this meeting, so I'm not sure at this point what his input would be.
Okay. And we had some other comments from the town engineer that were in here. Have those been addressed?
I provided those to Greg earlier today as part of the standard review process.
Okay.
That we go through for each system.
And
So
at
he is-
that point, they become part of the record then? I mean, as of right now, they're part of the file, if you will?
They are
Okay.
correct.
And I would say generally, I would feel that there are some minor revisions, some changes to the notations that I have, adding the invert elevation to the head wall. I don't think there were any substantial
There's a question about
changes
3, 4
requested here.
bedrooms.
Yep, it's designed as a 3-bedroom septic system.
Showed 4 on the plan, though.
It shows 4 on the floor
Floor
plan,
plan.
but it's designed as a 3-bedroom septic system.
So it's 330?
330, correct.
And you may have alluded to it, I just want to point out that in 310 CMR 15.411.5, there's actually a specific variance having to do with this specific instance. So not only is there a general variance, but it actually addresses what happens when you're in proximity to a public water supply. And DEP says that essentially, provided you're 100 feet away, that's a good ground for getting a variance. And we're 100 feet away with each component of this on-site system.
Do we have that?
I gave you copies, I can give you another copy.
No, I'm sure
So
we
it's
do.
right here. So if you take a look at, here's the regulation, I copied it for you. Take a look at section 5. So it basically says you need to consult, obviously, with the water department prior to issuing the variance, but no such variance or exemption shall result in the siting of a septic tank or soil absorption system, and you have to go through this, to within 100 feet of said tributaries. So they actually anticipated that by adopting Title V with respect to public water supplies, you may have some issues, and I think the regulation, makes it clear that there's some flexibility here. Again, we need to provide equivalent environmental protection, that's under the general standard. But DEP was anticipating that this could be a problem, so it's actually written right into that variance regulation.
So it would end up, be how many feet from it?
The leaching field is the closest component, it's 110 feet.
But this says if you're more than 100, you're okay.
Yeah, we're at 110.
Correct.
How far is the reserve area on that in relation to the line? It looked a lot closer. Can I take a look at that?
Here's the corner of the reserve right there. So. Let's go from there to, there's 108. That one's, here's 105, yeah.
Interesting. Looks like that was a natural drainage swale at one time. Coming off before they put the road in, but irregardless, if you meet perks and everything else, and
Yeah, we did
The
have
wetlands
some
there.
fill noted on some of the soil testing logs. I mean, that lot's been altered over the years, I'm sure, when the road got built.
do you have any other question or comment? I'm going to ask if there's any abutters.
Open it up.
All right. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions from the audience. I just ask you to please give your name and address for the record, and you can ask the questions through the board here. If you do, is there anybody? Please.
Yeah, my name's Ken Scott, I'm at 323 Country Way, which is right directly across Williamsburg Lane. Just have a couple quick questions. I'm not against anybody developing their land. Just want to make sure that they're doing it in accordance with all the rules and regulations that we all have to follow. Just a couple of little quick questions. So you made a comment that you made the conclusion, or someone made the conclusion, that it was not wetlands, that it was a tributary?
Correct.
Who would have made that determination?
The Conservation Commission and the Massachusetts DEP both concluded that.
Okay, because of Dougie's 305 Sharon's project there, does that have any impact on your project? In other words, do you have to go back for anything, any changes?
No.
So it's a standalone, so, but you had a permit, but you're actually asking to both, right?
We had a permit for this lot at one point, and then after that, I permitted the shearing project, and there was a change in how the wetlands versus the tributary were defined during that process, which has essentially voided the permit that was issued on this one.
And if the system had been put in when the permit was issued, you wouldn't even be here.
It,
I mean, even
after, I mean, if we found out that a system was put in an error after the fact, I imagine we would be back in here probably asking for the same variance. I mean, it depends if a certificate of compliance was issued. I mean, that system that was approved was reviewed by the Conservation Commission. It was reviewed by the DPW. It was reviewed by your previous Board of Health agent. And no one picked up on the tributary issue until the appeal process through the DEP. So, yeah, a variance would probably have to be issued after the fact on an issue like that.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, just quickly, can you show me where the actual leaching field is?
Sure.
Because I am right here.
Sure. You're opposite on Country Way, you said?
No, I'm right off of opposite,
Off of
on the same
Williamsburg?
side, yeah.
Okay, so your property's right here, the leaching field is right here on Williamsburg. Right here, there's two leaching trenches.
Yep.
One there, one there.
Okay. And regarding the easement, that's all has to do with zoning and all that, because you guys are gonna actually, that drainage easement will be worked into this plans, is it?
So we're not,
Where's that water go? Are you guys piping it underneath, or how is that water
yep.
once
So
it
the-
comes off?
Sure, so the drainage easement exists right now, it collects all the
Mhm.
catch basins off Country Way. We're not proposing any change to that pipe or any changes within that easement. We're not touching the easement or that drainage at
That's
all.
why you have the buffer there.
Right, so We are providing separate stormwater for the house. We do have a series of dry wells for the roof. We have a rain garden proposed for the driveway, and that was all reviewed under the stormwater permit.
So
I
that's
think
all-
just for clarification, that easement, I think your question, I think was done in the 1970s.
1970.
That's right.
So you're mitigating the water coming off the property and the house by putting it underground, so it's not going into the actual tributary? That water's gonna be collected on site, is that what you're saying?
It's, what the requirement is you're not allowed to discharge post-development more than what already is discharging pre-development. So we provided a set of calculations with an existing conditions runoff rate. We added in our proposed conditions, added in our proposed dry wells, and we're showing that we're not increasing the rate or the volume of runoff from the site.
So the leaching field is where it was originally placed when you guys did your permit before, or have you moved
It
it?
very slightly moved, its same general location.
And on that stormwater, I mean, it's not really in purview of this board, but who then, who approved the stormwater?
Conservation Commission.
They're the only ones that have to approve it?
Stormwater, yes, on the site, we're the only ones that had to approve it. As I said, this will,
Stormwater is regulated under Situate's local stormwater bylaw. This project is so small, it doesn't trigger review under the state stormwater standards, under the Wetlands Protection Act, and there's no wetland trigger here in any event. So it's a local bylaw, it's administered by the Conservation Commission. Certain instances, projects can be reviewed by the Planning Board, but principally the Conservation Commission reviews it.
Sir, do you have anything?
No question.
No questions? The only thing I'm worried about is we don't have one of the reviews that are really required, so. And I can't say any different. There's a lot of this that's thrown at me that I'd kind of like to read through on my own.
Of course.
Not in a public event that I kind of distracted. But I think the biggest thing is we need that other.
Yeah, we had spoken to him very briefly on Friday when the general septic review was being conducted and, you know, those comments being made. And he said that the water superintendent was present.
It's clearly
during the
written,
review.
too.
Yep, and
Yeah.
he indicated that he does want to review this.
So I think in light of that, it's almost to continue it to the next meeting. I don't think we're prepared to make a
I wouldn't have a problem
vote.
with that. I would
Yeah.
say, I think the system, I mean, if we, I think our focus should be on the system and what it's discharging, and I think the system that they proposed, I think there's somewhat of a comfort level there.
Yeah. Well, there's the setbacks and stuff, but it seems to be covered within Title V. But again,
Sure.
I'd rather be sitting at home in my chair reading it and reviewing it, or at my office, which is
course.
at home anyways. But,
And it is addressed specifically
Yeah.
in this, which is also.
I think I see it. I just, like I say, yeah, it's, I had a little bit of review on it. And, yeah, that would be it. I would suggest continuing for those two reasons. Yeah.
That becomes also a timing difference, a timing issue as well. When would our next meeting be?
So our next meeting is currently scheduled for January 12th. So that gets us just inside the 45-day period from December 5th.
And what we were hoping for is, we're hoping for action before our zoning meeting, which is typically the third week in January, so that
Fits.
fits. Works.
Perfect. Yeah. I wish we could act a little faster, but it kind of helped.
No, we understand completely. And just so you know, the additional documents that I gave to you, gave you a copy, actually, of the town warrant article adopting the Water Resource Protection District in 1987, just to confirm the dates. And I also gave you Section 420, a copy of the zoning map, plus Section 420 of the table of use from zoning, just to establish that, you know, residential is pretty much all that we could do on this lot, which is why there's a would be, the homeowners would be, be substantially deprived of all beneficial use of this lot. It's located within the R2 zoning district. So I wanted to make sure you had all of that information handy.
Was this the first time, or 2 years ago was the first time that it was attempted to be developed?
Yes.
Yeah.
The lot was created in 56.
Yeah. Well, would you say this issue that we're asking for the variance for was created in 87, so,
Correct.
yeah.
Long after the lot was created, long after the drainage easement was created.
And part of that argument is somebody didn't buy it 6 months ago and is trying to.
Correct. We haven't created our own hardship here. This has been in the family for more than 50 years, 60 years.
Yeah. Okay. And unless anybody's got anything to add?
I just want to make sure, Greg, you and I work together to address
Take care of Dan's comments.
the general comments.
Yep.
And that way they can be squared away prior to the meeting, and then this can be the final item.
Cool. Works for me. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
No, Thank you very much for your time.
Yep, that was a nice presentation, well-informed, and I'll see you after the new year.
Happy holidays. Do we have a time on the 12th? Or the only game in town, as far as you know?
So it'd be 7 o'clock and be
Okay.
first on the agenda.
Great.
Any other new business? Old business?
Well regs,
Yep.
we can add them to the agenda for next time and give you some final
me.
revisions to look at.
Yep. No other big things in town? We're good?
We have some housing-related issues and some hoarding-related cases that are ongoing and continuing. But they are, they've been around a while.
Gotcha.
So, no new cases of things being identified.
Administrative invoice
I
approvals.
have one.
Only one.
Just one?
How easy is that?
That's awesome.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. And did we have
Oh,
I saw him in the email, did we have some
We got those all straightened out.
minutes?
Oh, yeah. Did you see them in the email? Yeah.
I did.
What is the process? I said to Jen, those were the first ones I had done, and what is the correct process? Like, what?
Like tonight,
review?
we'd put them in here for minutes to be approved, and we'd just have a copy given to us, and then we can review them right on the spot, and it would be a vote for the board that the 2 or 3 of us. Depends who was at that meeting. If all 3 of us were here, then we just need 2 to vote.
Okay.
Like tonight, if I wasn't here for the minutes you had, we couldn't vote on them because you need at least 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you do it from the meeting before? Is that what you mean, or the meeting?
No, the minutes you had that you showed on the
Right,
computer,
right.
you could have had a copy of them tonight.
Oh, okay. And
Right.
Okay.
And it would have said-
And have it on the agenda.
Yeah, to approve
okay.
minutes of meeting December 22nd, and then at that point,
I
we'd,
wasn't sure what to do.
yeah, that would be kind of in this little section right now that we're doing.
Perfect.
Cleaning up housekeeping and business.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so I'll
Yeah.
know in the future. I didn't know how, I said to Jen, what's the next step? I sent it to them.
Yeah, and neither of us have been around for
Yeah.
meeting minute
Yeah.
approval. So what we'll do is we'll put both sets of meeting minutes on the next
Right,
agenda, so
and-
that we'll give you hard copies of the.
Yeah, we'll have them right
current
here,
meeting
boom,
and the
read them,
last
how they
one.
look, yeah, that looks
Okay.
good.
Good.
Make a
Thank
motion
you.
to approve minutes of meeting, boom, boom,
Sounds good to
second
me.
and approve.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll work. And next Monday, January 12th, you good
Yeah.
for that?
should be.
Me too. Who knows? Who knows what happens tomorrow?
One day at a
That's
time.
right. So we're good, all right?
Yep, just sign that and we're good. So I can get Ralph paid.
All right,
Thank you very much.
my pleasure, thank you. Awesome. Well, I wish you guys a Merry Christmas and
Thank you. You as well.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourned.
John?